Hey gang, this is David Mixner. How are you today? Sorry it's been so long between recordings. I've had computer problems. But before I begin, please subscribe so that you get notice of my videos. You can just find it down below, and I would be very, very grateful if you did. Today I want to talk about the lessons that I've learned from 60 years plus of activism. I've given it a lot of thought in the last couple of weeks of what I'd like to share with you who are involved in movements and ideas and visions and believe in a good planet and believe in a tomorrow. And so the first thing I want to say is, what is the purpose of a movement? Well, the purpose of a movement is not to make ourselves feel good, not to express outrage. The purpose of a movement is to change minds. It is to find the rhetoric and the actions that will make those who disagree with you listen to you, understand your issue better, and to be welcomed once they change their mind into a movement. It has to be important to not lose sight that it is not for us to feel good necessary in a movement, it is to make others feel welcome. The second thing I want to say is it has to be an inclusive movement and not exclusive. What do I mean by that is that an individual who might be a Republican or who might be someone that you normally wouldn't work with might agree with you on this issue. So it is important that they don't have to pass a litmus test of 20 other ideological issues that you feel are important in order to join you in just this one issue. You know, there were a lot of people in the anti-war movement against Vietnam that were Republicans, were more conservative than I was. And the secret of our success in working in that movement was to welcome everyone, union members, construction workers, anyone who would be willing to support our demand, one demand, of immediate withdrawal from Vietnam. We have a tendency to say, oh, how can so-and-so be part of this movement? He doesn't support independence for Puerto Rico, just as for example. Well, you know, I believe in independence for Puerto Rico or statehood, but it's not why I am working on a particular issue. And maybe, just maybe, if I can find that 10% where he does agree, or she does agree, or they or them agree with me, then I can talk to him about other issues because we're working side by side beside people that believe in the same thing. Now, this comes hand in hand with the third lesson that I've learned from 60 years of activism, and that is self-righteousness is the enemy of civilized dialogue. There is no question that we wouldn't be putting the energy and the effort into a movement and the money into a movement if we did not believe deeply in what we were doing. But we also must understand that we don't have a cornerstone on the truth, and that we can grow as well as we expect others to grow. And so instead of saying you're wrong or labeling them with some ideological tar, listen carefully, because even though they might not convince you that you're wrong, what they might give you are what actions you're taking, what words are you using that can be changed to make them joining us more accessible. The fourth lesson I want to say is keep an issue simple and understandable. We tend to use rhetoric that most Americans don't use. We tend to slogan, which in the end up hurting us. And one of the classic ones is defund the police. I think it cost us many congressional seats the last election. Now, I support refunding the priorities of the police and maybe looking at the budgets of the police or reforming the police. Those are all words that people can identify with and join us in. But when we say defund the police, it leaves an image in people's minds, whether that is what you meant or not, it's irrelevant. It leaves an image in people's minds that you do not want police on the street. And liberal, conservative, the polls overwhelmingly show that people want to be on the street. But I don't want to get caught up in this one particular issue. But anger and self-righteousness drives people away. Creating a litmus test that they must pass ideologically in order to work with you drives people away. So keep an open mind. Listen to them, because they will tell you in that dialogue how to make them feel more comfortable joining you. And so to draw lines and to act out of anger and to be self-righteous is really the enemy of any possibility of civilized conversation. The next lesson I want to talk to you about is our words are as important as our actions. And we talked about that in the previous lesson, but it is important that we choose our words carefully. And what might make a good slogan doesn't make good policy, doesn't make a good movement. So even what we chant is important, even though in the energy of a mass march, it's wonderful to chant and sort of get all that frustration out. I understand that. But Gandhi believed deeply that the words we use could hurt people as much as help them. And we are working on behalf of justice and goodness for other people. So if we really care about the people that we're working for, we will not sort of freely use any word. We will think about the responsibility we have to the people who are powerless or voiceless, and not indulge in language or even actions that will damage our cause and make a delay in getting the justice and the freedom and the economic parity that we want for those who are not receiving it in America right now. The other thing is, don't respond to our opponents in the same language, in the same actions as they do. We look on in amazement at some of the sheer insanity that our opposition has been engaging in. Their reckless rhetoric that reeks of racism, that reeks of violence, that reeks of anti-democratic movements. It is very important that we not resort to violence and that we call those who practice on violence in our movement out. That we should not live in intimidation if we see something wrong among ourselves, that we shouldn't call it out. I know that I have been calling out the Republicans in Congress for their lack of courage and acting like cowards because they're intimidated within their own party by those who have made a lot of noise. Excuse me. We don't want to be that. We don't want to practice violence. We don't want to storm the Capitol. We don't want to be the people who, when we see ill-advised behavior, like jumping on people's dinner tables at a sidewalk cafe, that we call it out. We don't defend what is indefensible. We don't become what they have become. What will make us as attractive is that we will offer an alternative, a nonviolent alternative that's inclusive, that results in justice and freedom for every American. But to do that, we must be nonviolent. We must not act in anger. We must not damage property. Dr. King and Gandhi taught us that over and over again. And if you're going to name them as people who you follow, then follow their words and actions and not just make them a hero because it makes you feel good. Finally, nonviolence is the only way. Civil disobedience is action, and it is not passive. But if we think that we have to practice violence or burn down a building or a small business of someone who had just started it and trying to do better for their families, or beating people up or throwing rocks is going to change minds, you couldn't be more wrong. History has proven that the greatest change has come from nonviolent movements that practice civil disobedience. Now, here's the key in civil disobedience. I've been to jail over a dozen times. The key to civil disobedience is you can't whine when they arrest you, because the reason you're getting arrested and you're choosing to get arrested is that you want your family, your friends, your co-workers to ask you why you thought it was so important to go to jail. And by that enables you, by your sacrifice, it enables you one second here. It enables you to engage in dialogue with those who don't understand your actions. Music has always played an important part of our movements throughout history, the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the populist movement. Remember that by going to jail, pay your fine, get out of jail, but don't say, oh, they arrested me because I believe. Use it as a way to open minds. If you make a sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice, it's scary going to jail, quite honestly, they will listen to you more. They will want to know why you were willing to do something that most people are not willing to do. And so nonviolent and civil disobedience is the only way. Not anger, not violence, not righteous ideology, not intractable beliefs, but sacrificing yourself for a greater good in a way that people will listen to you. Now, finally, I don't know if this is a lesson or not, but it's a little bit of advice. You know, those of us who've worked all of our lives in movements, and for me, it will be 61 years that I have been dedicated my life in the service of others. And I learned something very important. When I became too self-important, when I became a prisoner of my ideology, when I thought I was indispensable for the movement and that it would just fold up and disappear if I wasn't involved. Nothing could be further from the truth. I could die tomorrow, and guess what? Cars are still going to go out in the street. There'll still be hurricanes. The sun will rise up in the east and it will set in the west. And so we have to live personally the way we want to see the world be for others. So if we want love and peace and laughter and joy in everyone's life in this planet, if we want food security, if we want economically things, then you must have those things in your life. It is important that when you go with friends or family on vacation, that you don't call the office 16 times a day. It is important to go and laugh with friends. It is important to take time off and renew your intellect and rest your body. Because if you have that laughter, that joy yourself, you're going to be able to describe it to others. But if you are a selfless, cold, ideological person who thinks they're indispensable, that's not going to be attractive to anyone. So more than anything, have joy in your own life and have love in your own life. Thank you for listening today. Sorry it's been so long. Don't forget to subscribe. And I just want to say, and after coming towards the end of this pandemic. I love you. I've been honored for these 61 years to work by your side. Keep up the good work, because that's what counts.